Hey, good morning, and welcome to yet another episode of the Lumiere Learning Monday. And all of you who are viewing this live from India, good morning. From anywhere else in the world, good day to whatever time of the day it is. And for those of you who will watch this later, and I do hope you can watch this later, I'm delighted to speak with our guest today, Archana Hingorani. Archana, welcome.
Thank you, Deepa. Good to be here.
When we, Archana, met for the college little lunch that we had, the little tidbits that you talked about, your PhD and then the advisory council at Pittsburgh. And I was like, tell me more, tell me more. And then that wasn't enough. I said, I have to have you tell this story to a lot more people, classmates and otherwise, people, who don't have the privilege like I haven't had to follow your journey. And I thought, what better way than to invite you as our Lumia Learning Monday guest? And thanks to all that's happening and the event going digital, you don't need to come to our office in New Bombay anymore, and you wouldn't have on this rainy day, perhaps. So thank you so much.
Not at all. My pleasure, Deepa. You're the ultimate guru of networking. So I'm very happy to be here and talk to you and learn from you too. Yeah.
No, I mean, fantastic. Archana, we studied economics in St. Xavier's College, and after that, you took off to go to the US. You want to tell our audience here about your, steps and what you went away to study, because when you came to Xavier's, you weren't there in the 11th and 12th. I know you joined midway in the first year.
Yeah. Yeah. So I always did things, like in the now, sort of see what the gap is and move on. So yes, I had a notion that I wanted to be a doctor. That's why I joined the science stream. And suddenly and that's how I think a lot of my decisions were made. Suddenly I felt that, of course, it was probably not what I wanted to do. And more importantly, at that age, I felt that everybody else was having more fun, and I thought, economics would be something that, of course, I knew that I would like it, but I also thought that it would be great fun to at least do something that is not bookish. So that was my major motivation. It wasn't all this lauded, I want a career and all of that, and I know what I want to do. I was focused on trying to have some more fun rather than just being, bookish sort of. That was my goal. So I had very small goals in those days. And the next goal, actually, that's the reason I went to the US, was what you reminded me earlier, very quiet. I just did not have the ability to, even though, we were in Xavier's and it's a great place to learn how to interact, socialize, etc. I felt that there was a huge gap in my personality. And the only way I could get rid of it was if I was to have to fend for myself. So I decided that, let me get out of this frame. And I was comfortable going to the US because I had been traveling there since I was a child. My mom's siblings all lived in that part of the world. So it was not completely new, but the thought that somehow I felt that if I could live by myself at the ripe old age of I think I was 19. I was the youngest in the class in those days. When I went to do my MBA, I felt that I could handle most things. So that was, again, was not a motivation for a career. It was more for personality development.
Wow. And then after the MBA, then what happened? You decided you started work, or you thought you loved academics? Because I think your instinct is books and study, because I think that comes to you most naturally. You are a learner, isn't it?
Yeah, sure. But so when I did my MBA, just like all of us, I did want to make sure that I had the right, I had a good career and all of that. But somehow I felt that, as an MBA at I remember that I turned 21 the year I got my degree. Okay. So
Wow.
it was not like, there were like people asking you to join them, because most of the time MBAs would have some level of experience, right?
Yeah.
And that made me think that maybe I needed to do something more in terms of academics. So I did apply for my PhD and got through, and then felt that maybe it's time to just go out there and do a job and then go back. So I took a sabbatical from them. I said, I don't want to join right away. So I came back home, and actually that was sort of very not that I planned it, but I think was very good for my foundation, because I had the opportunity to work as a EA to in those days the god of the financial sector, Mr. H.T. Parekh. Uh,
Wow.
I joined him. I worked with him for a year, and I did everything that he told me to do. And at that silly age, I thought that whatever I was doing because I knew how to do it. Actually, it was not true. He made me do things without making me think that I was learning from him. It almost sounded like my own idea. It wasn't. That sort of Actually, I learned that style from him. That
Wow.
management style, teaching style. And till date, I unconsciously do that. I don't want to try and tell people what to do, and they probably think that they thought of it themselves. Part of it is me too. So that style, and how to sort of communicate with people. I have to say that he was the quietest guy on earth, worse than me, right? But imagine, he had created this whole sector, and he did so many things, and it was a great learning experience for me for a year. And then I went back to teach it to do my PhD. Many people think, including Professor Nadkarni. I remember reading his recommendation note, and it said I had a I was following my father without thinking about it. He was a well-known professor in those days of accounting, and because of which he felt that I was doing this because of him. I'm not
Ah,
sure. Perhaps I was. There
ah,
are a lot of important influences in our lives.
yeah.
He played an important role, but I did not go and do a PhD in accounting. I wanted to do finance, and not economics and not statistics, which is what we did together in
Yeah.
college. And I ended up, in this stream, taught for many years there, and came back in '94 again on a lark. Felt that this life was done. I had
Yeah.
uh, I had taught, I had published, I knew how to do all those things, but did not feel that I was having fun. Again, I was not having fun. I wanted to come back into the family fold. So I decided to move back without, saying what is that career that I could have done with this PhD, and what will I get in India? It would be starkly different. It was a gut decision, and I mean, one can say that it worked out well, but I'm sure that I don't know what it would have meant if I had opted out.
Wow, what a story that is. And I'm very curious to dig a little deeper about that style that you talk about of the quiet leader and that quiet leadership, which almost sort of nudges the mentee to believe that they sparked off that idea, and how beautiful. So even as a teacher or as a mentor or the boards that you serve on, what a powerful gift that is to be able to learn that at an early age and then be able to, you know, apply it, imbibe it, and apply it. Tell me a little bit about maybe a story or like an event or a episode around that
So,
style.
that episode, I remind myself there are two actually. When I joined him, they were raising capital for a new company. So he loved creating new companies that India had a gap in. So while he had created ICICI, created HDFC, he decided that there was no original oil exploration company, and that gave birth to what was in those days and even today Hindustan Oil Exploration. And obviously not his forte, I mean, what did we know about oil and gas in those days? It was not something that many Indian companies did not do well. And he said, we are going to raise capital, and he would say, he would make all the calls to the chairmen. Then he'd tell me that, now you have to go there and you have to make sure that they give you the papers, you check them, they will sign, they'll give you the money. And I would happily go there, do it, and come. And there was no hindrance because he had already made the calls, right? But of course, in my pigeon brain, that was not registering. I was thinking that I'm going there, I'm not helping him to raise all this money. So that was first episode. But the second one, which was more real, was, he was very, very focused on what India needs to be at many levels, Gandhian in his thoughts, and what are the policies that need to be there. And he wanted to write a paper on gold policy. That's the first paper I actually wrote on my own. Of course, I'd done, in those days, I'd not yet reached my research stage. So he wanted to write on the gold policy, and we polished it over 10 days. And I can tell you that I actually thought I wrote it because I did so many cuts to it, right, based on whatever pointers he was giving me. And it was not, his style was very different. It's not like he would dictate or he would, say, this sentence is not right. He'll just tell you that, this needs these pieces. So you'd go back and try and do a little bit more of it. So that was my first, and I honestly felt, I mean, when I read it, when it got published, I was thinking that, I played a very important role. Looking back, whatever, 30 years, I know that was all, only in my head.
Wow, that is so beautiful. You've lived in many worlds. You've taught, and you've sort of worked with people in different parts of the world. So tell me what it is, because you straddle multiple worlds, and today in India we are at this tesseract. Yesterday's the whole show of the might of Indian ambition and aspiration, and what is it like to sort of see what we are doing at this point in time and where we are headed, given your journey of 30 years and the whole ambition that the country has? Maybe you want to talk a little bit about that.
So I think where we are today, especially because it may have dawned on some of us earlier, but with the pandemic, it's very, very obvious that it doesn't matter who you are, where you are. You can do whatever you want from wherever you are. And I think it's a concept that's turned everybody's lives, on their heads. We know that. But in that context, I think we are probably well placed. I would say that pandemic has been sort of like a nullifier of advantages for many other people, and India, probably is going to gain from it. We are not at that stage where, let's say China is, which is well developed. They have everything that they need to do, and here we are, still not as developed. We may be better than many other countries, but we have a lot more to do, right? And with the population that we have, I think we're very, very well positioned. What from a professional perspective, I think there couldn't be a better time, right, for people from India or any other part of the world to, sort of look at opportunities. For India, a little bit easier because we, as much as we earn here, we can earn anywhere else and even more. Reverse may not be true. A Canadian or a German may not want to work in India because you probably won't get as much salary. I'm sure that will go away in a decade or so. But right now, I think the world is ours to take over. But in terms of how we are we different? I mean, looking at where I worked with so many different people across the world, and of course lived and worked elsewhere too. I think that probably the similarities are more than the differences. Be it the working styles, maybe a little bit more. We are very fluid in India in our working style. Relatively speaking, we're much better than we were 30 years ago. I remember when I came back, I had a very hard time adjusting because people would walk in, a little less focused on time and a little less responsive to deadlines and all of that. And it has improved, and I think maybe I've also adjusted. So there are working style differences, but I think if you were to look at how we have performed as a let's say as a professionals in this country and how we look at the economy or what we do, or even our cultures. I mean, many people will say, India is very different from other parts of the world. Actually, it's not true. It's all at the surface that you think that you speak a different language, or you don't go to church, you go to a temple or whatever, and you more traditional society here, more advanced and liberal society. They're not true. They're as liberal and as traditional as we are. There are certain things. I mean, you're seeing it right now play out in that part of the world, where suddenly all these age-old traditions are coming out, of the differences, the gaps. They were there then also, they're there now also. So to me, it's probably it's easier to say that we are in a global world and we can all do whatever we want to do in different, whatever careers we choose or whatever options we want. But actually, if you had experienced it, not over your lifetime like I have, you would realize that it's really not very different. The biases are the same, and the
Okay,
the
that's it.
the cultures may look different, but really, as I said, the similarities overweigh the differences.
You talk of biases. Maybe we just go a little deeper into that. You did talk about being the youngest at 19 when you went to your MBA class. You came from India, and you must have sort of been different at that point in time, and then maybe seen different through the career. And because we are talking about women in the workplace and getting more women in the workplace, women in finance, I thought it's important for us to probably explore that experience and navigating through that and still holding your ground and pushing forward.
So, as I said, I mean, what I meant by biases was that, when people think that, your broad mind, they're more liberal, so their thought process is different. At many levels, it isn't, my favorite story has been that, in the PhD program, and I was sitting on some committees alongside some older professors. One of them looked at me when I walked into the room and said, "Oh, you remind me of The Working Girl," which was a movie that came out at that point in time with Melanie Griffith. And I looked at him and I looked at myself, and there was no resemblance in terms of either the sex appeal or the clothing or her, what the role that she essayed, which was of a personal secretary, right? And here I'm training to be a professor, and he looks at me and he says, "Oh, you remind me of The Working Girl," and I was really taken aback, because that was the thought process. Right? It's female, so you can equate a professor, to somebody who is, doesn't have that advantage. That job for her was appropriate, but the comparison was completely unusual and weird. I mean, I couldn't respond. I was so taken aback by that comment, right? Of course, we laughed about it after it came out, and I talked about it to some other people, and we were like, what was he thinking? But the point I'm making is that those biases are available here too, right? I mean, sometimes people tell you that, "Oh, you're a female and you've achieved so much." I don't know what that means. It's as good as what a guy does. He works as hard as we do on a professional front, and you're a female, probably, to me it makes no sense. But I understand the importance of trying to talk about how those journeys have been. But when it comes to being compared to a guy, or any or otherwise, I think it really shouldn't matter.
Yeah, thank you. You have said something very important in the beginning of this interview about how H.T. Parekh identified opportunity spaces that for India of what we should foray into an oil exploration. How did that imprint influence your thought process as you were doing things in your journey?
I tell you, it was a very big one. So somehow, I would say it's serendipity that I learned this straight from him, and this is all hindsight. It was not that was obvious to me at that point in time, but I have also chosen to be in places and sectors which are unknown, which are new, which allow me to learn. Maybe perhaps that was his legacy to me. Not that many people worked with him much longer, but I had the privilege of working with him like side by side, in the last 10 years of his career. And I'm sure there was a lot of learning already. So to me, it was the best gift ever. And this was also, I want to acknowledge, it was thanks to my dad. He would push me a lot because of my personality, quiet, not outgoing, blah, blah, blah. He would keep making me subtly do things, without telling me to do them. But, so one day he says, go and meet Mr. Parekh, then he would tell me something else. So this is how I met him. And he said, what are you doing? I said, nothing as of now. I've just come back, done my MBA, had slight American accent, all of that, And he says, tomorrow morning, please come and meet me and then we can start working together. So I was like, okay, here goes my fun year, I'm supposed to have fun. But it was really good that, he allowed me to learn from him. I mean, it was a big privilege. But because of that, as I said, when I came back, I joined, a small financial institution in those days. Today, perhaps not very well looked at, ILFS. It was a small firm with, hardly 50 of us, and they started a new division. As I tell many people, again, it was sheer not luck, but sheer coincidence. I just come back from the US. I understood the US system. They wanted to raise capital from there. It was private equity, venture capital, never done in India in a fund format. So, they handed over those papers to me. There was a lot of research, which was my forte. I put all of that together and, sort of made my way into that new business that they wanted to do. And even over the years, trying to learn from that, I guess, alluding to new things, everything that we did from that fund was brand new. There were brand new sectors. It was not because I was hung up on brand new, but this was 94, 95, when the country was trying to do so many new things. And I got to learn about so many sectors, about people, got over my hang up of figuring out people, because private equity is all about people. So you don't know them, then it doesn't work for you. So I learned that skill right from scratch right there. So, and even till today, I'm always trying to see where is it going to be different? What are the gaps? Where can I learn? I think it's been a very clear and important, understated, objective of mine.
Yeah. And the two mentors and role models you talk about, Mr. H.D. Parekh and your father, both, stalwarts in their own right and own field, and you like a little sponge, I guess, right from the beginning, learning, soaking in, and reflecting. I think you're a very, very reflective person, and even though you spend that short stint, I guess you have kept going back to those, drawing from those learnings, that must have been a lot that you gleaned from those experiences. So when you were contemplating what to do next and you've been evaluating, tell us about how you came to evaluate and your thought process on, how do you process? How do you think of what is it that I should do now? Which are the companies I accept to be on the boards of, your whole outlook to influencing and to impacting must come from a code of, your values and, where you come from and your ethos. So maybe you want to tell us a little bit about that.
So to me, it's naturally it's not been so much about what can I influence. It's still about what is new and what can I learn. And of course, again, it's understated. It's not like it's on top of my mind. I need to learn something new. It's just that I think the CPU processing in my brain is always thinking about what is it that looks like it makes sense from a, let's say, for example, there are two things that I sort of, and many of these things don't come to you because you're suddenly getting up and saying, I see that as a gap. I think it comes to you because you're seeing what's happening in your surrounding. You're learning so many new things every day that you can then recognize patterns and say, okay, I think this will probably make sense. So two things that I go back to, which is what I ended up, as of today, what I do is focus on mentoring and nurturing younger companies, which is more of a people thing. But in which spaces, I think if I go back, 2005 or 6 laid the foundation for me again. By absorption, not my idea at that point in time. Some of my larger investors who were pension funds insisted that I needed to represent them because they did not have the time on larger forums in the United Nations for environment, for financial institutions, etc. Of course, I did not have the time, so I was like sort of hesitating and not wanting to invite those additive new learnings, and but I had to because they were very large, and I knew that it would make sense for me to allow for that to happen. And that's where my journey to make sure that all my investments focused on ensuring governance, social responsibility, environment. I learned everything there, because the first day when I went to those meetings, they all brighter countries than us from an ESG perspective. They knew what needed to be done. And when they looked at me for India stories, I couldn't find any. There were not that many in 2004-5 where people were, woke about ESG sort of, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
and the first step that we took as an organization after I learned all of this was that we decided every investment, regardless of old and new, we pick up this piece and make sure that things were being done. And this was not, it's not so much, it obviously is good for the country, the environment, the nation, but clearly there was a pattern that if you do that, you are not only serving the better interests of the global human race or economy, whatever you want to call it, but it is actually more valuable. People look at you differently, people value you differently when you have all these factors in place. So today, I don't do an investment if it doesn't allow itself to tick those boxes. By allow, I mean you may not be there. That doesn't mean that you can't do it. So when we go into companies, one of the first things I tell them is that these 3 pieces, you have to work with us. If you're already working on it, we want to improve. If you're not working on it, we want you to do it. So that was one thing. And today everybody talks about it. I'm talking about 2005-6 when I started to insist. But today, you have impact funds. You'll see everybody saying we are, and it's very good that they're doing it because the whole message has spread. And I remember in those days, I would try and explain how it was the same as, let's say 200 years ago, there was no accounting gap principles and Ind AS and writing a balance sheet and making sure that, you gave in. All of that happened over time, right? People learned that this was important. So to me, this is as important, and it's today probably part of many people's lexicon. It's not yet there, but it's so as I said, I saw that it's not like I said this is going to be a trend. I learned from it and I said, let me just focus and make sure that we follow that, because to me it made a lot of sense, right?
Yeah.
Second thing again came out of the GFC, which was that many of our companies suffered, right? And there was nothing you could do. You could sell cheap, or you could wait, support them strategically, sometimes even financially, and hope that you could get it better. And in my journey of so many years, that 2008, 7, 8, 9 was the first time we lost money in a 20-year career. We never lost money. We didn't know what it meant. It's like not having a bad day at all, right? I mean, that doesn't happen in life, but we hadn't experienced that. How do you handle that? It's very different. And in that process, I saw a pattern. I was like, the ones that did well were the ones that said, we need to change. And when they changed, we were able to help them grow. And the ones that did not hoped that, because they were like a big partner to Tata, or it was a cycle, what can we do? It's a cycle, sort of lost money. And that was not a good thing. I mean, you don't want to lose money anyways, but if it is being given to you by third parties, especially people whose pension and, their future some party is reliant on what you do, it's not a good thing. And that's the pattern I saw, that, if you introduce new business models, new innovations, I'm talking about 2007, 8. And today, it's transformed into this idea that every business model has to change because we are now digital. Or forget digital, we're also faster at doing new innovations. It doesn't have to be about technology, IT technology, it can be any technology. It makes a whole lot more sense to try and discover something today than it did, let's say, 15 years ago, because it will take you another 8 years to figure it out. Today it doesn't. It takes 2 or 3 because you have so many different ways of attacking the problem and solving it. So that's what I'm focusing on, those two things.
Wow. Yeah, you talk about that you're not consciously thinking impact and influence, but in your, the outcome that comes out of this way of working, where you're focused on the doing and not really focused on what am I getting at the end of it, is just willy-nilly such a large influence and an impact that you get to make, Archana. I mean, really, I think it's a privilege also to get exposed to those things, getting those opportunities, but it's as much also what you make of it, how you use it, how you keep. And there's a recurring theme almost that I see of how you keep pushing beyond what you know, and to embrace that new knowledge frontier, so to say, and then it kind of opens up stuff that helps a lot of companies and individuals in your mentoring, because you're also eager to share, or maybe.
So the only part I'd agree is so in any case, I think any success that we have with our investee companies or whatever we do in life is, I think it's 100% collaborative. It can't be just you or just one more person. It has to be, a confluence of people, because there are that many people you need to be able to do the things that we do and get the right results. But one thing that I found lacking in me as foresight when I was, sort of working through my own career, was the fact that while I had good mentors that were sort of, not that I reached out to them in my early stages in life, I didn't know what a mentor even meant. It's just that they were available for me and I learned a lot from them. But in the more senior phases of one's career, and that's true for everybody, the more senior you get, there is a huge expectation that you know how to do things on your own. You don't need to go to anybody else, right? And any gap, or your ability to talk to your peers sometimes is there, sometimes it's not there, because sometimes they're competitive with you, right? So how do you do that? So mentorship, in my opinion, is one of the key things that I think is sorely missing from at least our Indian environment. There are a lot of steps being taken nowadays, early on, identify the fast growers, give them somebody to learn with, etc. But it's not necessary that you find that mentor right within your firm. It may even be somebody from the industry, perhaps not somebody, until unless people at home or your senior family understands what you're doing. Maybe an industrial mentor would be so useful. So in that context, working with companies, obviously you're working with younger companies, means the entrepreneurs are, they're smart, they have a lot of ideas, but they also need some level of maneuvering so that they get to the right strategies, etc. And that mentorship, I agree, is important, and it allows us to feel that we are probably contributing to the growth of those organizations. Yeah.
Yeah. And see, there are two, there's this whole thinking around startups, which is, and the push that are given to startups on the one hand. And then there is the whole discourse around the MSME segment, some older, some younger. And, you need sort of to have to raise the bar, so to say, to make it inclusive for everyone to grow. In your work and your inclinations, what do you think each of these needs, and what is it that ought to be done for them? If you can sort of talk, and are we getting one piece right and not getting another piece right? And are we doing justice to the entire ecosystem the way it needs to, or are we prioritizing and maybe we are not prioritizing it correct, or we are focusing on just one of to, and then you then have this whole unicorn sort of a mindset that comes in, as opposed to lifting the bar for everyone. I just want to explore
Sure,
that.
sure. So, startup is a very popular word nowadays, just like private equity is. It wasn't in 95. Nobody had heard of private equity, and nobody used to use the term startup. But what were we doing in those days? You were investing in newer companies, sunrise sectors. The only major difference was that you were trying to invest in companies that were new in the Indian context, but those ideas were not brand new. So for example, cellular technology, it was available everywhere else. It made its debut in India in the 90s, so it was new from that perspective, right? So you were nurturing those kind of companies. They were new. uh, they were not necessarily young entrepreneurs of today. They were probably larger corporates trying to be brave and saying, let me venture into a newer sector. But the ethos was the same: something new, something small, something different. But there were a lot of learnings available from different parts of the world, etc. So in that sense, uh, even in those days, the government was encouraging, right? It was making sure that all banks participated in funds, private equity. In those days, there were no big boys from the US or the Western world trying to uh, run into India. I mean, we had not even proven what we could do, right? So there was a lot of local money which was encouraged by the government. They did not call it startup, they did not call it MSME, but literally it was those things. Did it mean that it was the same concept of MSME today, which is, you go to the tier 2, tier 3 type of towns and the services for them, etc.? It wasn't, because we hadn't even started looking. I mean, all our bigger cities and even people who could sort of afford all those services or not afford at that time, 16 rupees per minute was not something anybody wanted to pay for. They were still, on peripheral from a country perspective. But I think that was our journey. We started there. Had we
Yeah.
not done that, we wouldn't have been here today. Had we not had the not that, again, I think it was cumulative uh, thought process which allowed the country to open itself and leapfrog to cellular. We don't have landlines as many, but let's just bring in this new technology. Today landlines are redundant, right? So it wasn't that they thought to become redundant. They thought that this is the only way to start opening up the economy, because that's the promise we made to the world, that we would open it up. And quite honestly, if they'd not done this as the first thing that they did, we probably wouldn't be where we are today. So for example, had we started on electricity instead of telecom, it wouldn't have had the same impact, because this is the journey that allowed us to become who we are in the eyes of the world, right? I mean, we now have even bad words named after us, as in your Bangalore, meaning somebody took your job in Bangalore. You couldn't have thought of that, in the 90s.
Yeah.
So, but from just going back to that point that you're making about startups, are we getting the right? So I think that government has many pockets through which it's trying to push this, right? It's recognizing that last 15 years, the transformation in many countries, including the US, has been on the basis of newer technologies becoming bigger and bigger, and sort of then, uh, becoming unicorn. And I think unicorn is passe now. You want to be a decacorn or something like that. But the point is that yes, there is a lot of money coming in from so many different parts of the world, for two reasons. One, of course, as a population, we are so big that we can absorb whatever product is being made, either a widget or a consumer product, or even hard assets. We need so much of it, right? So from that perspective, it's a no-brainer that one should invest in countries like us. Second is the fact that yes, there is some uh, greed in people's head, that if you can spark a good idea, make it grow, throw more and more money at it, it can become a unicorn. So yes, there is some influence of that. But I think that there is a lot of capital that's available today, which it wasn't, let's say, 15, 20 years ago when we were trying to do those things. And there is enough that you could try and do what the government is sort of would love to see, that as many companies that get funded from India, who are innovative, who are the new ideas. So that's the difference, right? In the 90s, you were investing in companies. You didn't have to worry about if the idea would work because it had already worked at so many different places. Today, unlike, a Flipkart example, which is again an idea that was, born somewhere else, but it became very big in India. Those are ideas that already there, but today we are playing a very different game as a country. We are saying we want to bring in everything that we can, which is absolutely new. It's our idea, but we know that it will work for the world, right?
Yeah. Wow.
That
Yeah.
is, and from that perspective, I think the government has played probably the best role that they can, which is to create many, many avenues, even their own capital, not necessarily the most efficient manner, but it is available, and it's available in significant size that, one can rely on it to say that, if I was to want to bring in capital and show investors, especially the non-Indian ones, that there is people in India believe you. You can, if you show government capital, I think that's a very big strength. So from that perspective, I think we are doing the right thing. In fact, all the companies that are being invested today, from if you were to look at the, even the, let's say, a more advanced series A, series B type of companies, they all are MSME born. Like, they have MSME certification, they have and they are touching so many different sectors, that some of them are who would have I tried very hard in the last 20 years to do something in the agricultural space. I just couldn't get my head around it. It was too risky. I don't think that's true anymore. There's so many people doing, agriculture related investments, and I think that's so amazing, because I know that how hard it is to get into those sectors, and to imagine not only money flowing in, but ideas that allow all these sectors, which are sort of the backbone of the country at many levels. We do still want to be, the feeder of the world if we could, right? So how do you put all of that together? I think there is enough happening. So I'm sorry, long answer to your very
No, 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 no. This was, like I said, an exploration. So, Archana, next 3 to 5 years, what's your sort of level of uh, focus? Where do you want to be with
I,
Siana? And
I haven't thought about it. So Sienna is, it's a culmination of a bunch of us together, uh, uh, trying to do something in this innovation space, in the entrepreneurial space, mentoring. That has been our objective. But I think from a, I haven't thought of it. It's just, we are ourselves a startup. We're not MSME, but we're a startup, right? Because we're less than 2 years to 3 years old as a group. But so continuing to do what we do, so that we get enough size and influence to be able to allow other people to walk into the firm and become the leaders of tomorrow. I mean, at this point in time, I don't see this being, something that you take to your grave or whatever. You try and make it what it is, and you hope that it is attractive enough for the next layer to come in and make it bigger and better. So but I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I think, from an individual perspective, I would think that, trying to also now think about different alternate ideas, not necessarily work related, would be the right thing to do. I think otherwise it becomes too late. So I've mentioned my love for the
fun.
concept of design. So I always think about what I could do in that space,
Yeah.
just generally to begin to learn, and then to do something that makes sense to me. But that would be like my hobby, like, you know Uma started growing organic farming stuff. I don't think I can get there, but, just understanding what that is as an alternate, not career path, but as an alternate that sort of lets you, move to the next phase of life, which is not necessarily, right now it's 24/7 running after something because you're trying to nurture and grow a brand new firm. But I would hope that, in 4 or 5 years, I can sort of segue into letting people run the firm that we've built, and allow me to learn other things.
Learning, teaching, mentoring, discovering new things that are not tried before. Archana Hingorani, it's just been so, how shall I say, we could go on.
Yes.
And it's I think just the beginning for me to learn more and keep watching and following the space, and to sort of see what you create and what you prioritize, because I know it's always going to be way, way ahead of the curve, no matter what you do.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. So, Deepa, I have to say this, as I've told you, is a quintessential person who tries to connect and make sure everybody's connected to each other, which has, been a very big minus point of mine. I've learned over the years, but there is nobody better than you on this front. So I'm very happy to come back anytime you want and explore further.
Thank you so much, Archana. And I wish you lots and lots of success, lots of wins, doing exactly what you want to do, both heart and mind. And may you keep enriching, may you keep powering, and may you keep inspiring. Thank you
Thank
so much. Thank you. Thank you very much.